The slap cracked through the trauma bay louder than the heart monitor alarm. A sharp, wet sound that made every head snap toward it. For half a second, no one breathed. Not the nurses frozen mid-step. Not the paramedic gripping a blood-soaked gurney. Not the patient gasping under harsh fluorescent light. Dr. Ethan Caldwell's hand was still in the air when the silence hit, his fingers trembling with rage, his jaw locked tight as if daring the room to challenge him. Rachel Moore staggered back a half step. Her heel clipped the edge of the supply cart. Metal rattled. She did not cry out. She did not raise her hands. She just stood there, eyes wide, breath shallow, one palm pressed lightly to the counter, as if grounding herself in the room. Blood dripped somewhere. Steady. Unbothered. "Do you hear me?" Caldwell snapped, voice cutting like broken glass. "You don't speak unless I ask you to speak." He leaned in close, invading her space, breath hot with adrenaline and entitlement. "You don't think, you don't diagnose, you do what you're told." Around them, the emergency room held its breath. A young nurse near the wall swallowed hard, fingers white around her clipboard. She looked away first. The charge nurse shifted his weight, eyes darting to the floor, already calculating risk, already choosing silence. No one moved. No one stepped in. Rachel's scrub cap sat crooked from the blow. A loose strand of hair brushed her cheek. She lifted her chin just enough to meet Caldwell's eyes. There was fear there, yes, but not the kind he expected. Not panic, not surrender. Something tighter, controlled. Like a door held shut under pressure. Caldwell mistook it for weakness. He always did. "Know your place," he said quietly. The words meant only for her, meant to cut deeper than the slap ever could. "You're disposable." Somewhere behind them, a monitor beeped once, then again. Slower now. The patient was fading. Time was slipping through the room, like water through open fingers, and everyone felt it. Everyone knew it. Rachel Moore did not look at the monitor. She did not look away from Caldwell either. Inside her chest, her heartbeat settled into a familiar rhythm. Slow, steady. The kind you learned to trust when everything else was falling apart. The room thought this moment was over. It wasn't. They had learned to see Rachel Moore as background noise, the way you stop noticing the hum of fluorescent lights after a while. She moved through the emergency room with her head slightly down, shoulders relaxed, steps measured and quiet. For 3 months, she had taken every task no one wanted. Bedpans, supply runs, night shifts that stretched until dawn. She never complained, never corrected anyone, never raised her voice. To the staff, she was easy, a temporary badge, a name that would disappear when her contract ended. "You see her?" whispered Megan, a young nurse in bright teal scrubs, leaning toward the charting station. Her eyes followed Rachel as she wiped blood from a counter with slow, careful strokes. "I swear she doesn't even blink when Caldwell yells. It's creepy." David, the charge nurse, let out a low breath through his nose. "Some people are just built soft," he said, though there was doubt in his voice, or scared enough to keep their heads down. Megan shrugged, relief flickering across her face. "At least it's not me," she muttered, then went back to her screen. Rachel heard all of it. She always did. The whispers slid past her like wind, familiar, harmless. She stacked gauze packs with precise alignment, corners squared, hands steady despite the chaos around her. A paramedic brushed past, nearly colliding with her. "Sorry," he said automatically. She nodded once, eyes already moving to the next task. No wasted motion, no hesitation. In the supply closet, away from the noise, she rested her forehead briefly against the cold metal shelf. One breath in, one breath out. Slow count. The same pattern she had used in places with no walls, no light, and far worse sounds than shouting doctors. Her pulse dropped. The room came back into focus. She adjusted the long sleeves under her scrubs, tugging them down to cover old scars she never talked about. A faded memory flickered and was gone. This was not the past. This was controlled. Civilian. Safe, they had told her. Low stress, they had promised. "More," Caldwell's voice barked from the hallway, sharp and impatient. "Move! Trauma coming in." The words snapped something back into place. Rachel straightened, rolled her shoulders once, and stepped out of the shadows. Her face was neutral again, unremarkable, invisible. No one noticed the way her eyes changed as she walked toward the bay. No one noticed the way the noise seemed to fall away around her, or how her hands were already preparing for what was coming. They thought they knew who she was. They were wrong. Seattle Grace Memorial liked to call itself a controlled environment, but Rachel knew better. The emergency room was a battlefield dressed in clean floors and polite signage, chaos hidden behind protocols and laminated charts. Sirens wailed outside, rising and falling like a warning that never quite ended. Automatic doors burst open. Cold air rushed in, sharp with rain and blood. The smell hit first. Iron. Wet asphalt. Fear. "Male, mid-50s, a paramedic shouted as they rolled the gurney in fast, wheels rattling. Multiple gunshot wounds to the chest and abdomen. Pressure's dropping. Dr. Ethan Caldwell stepped into the center of the room, like a man stepping onto a stage. His shoulders squared. His voice rose. He thrived on this moment. "Bay 1, he ordered. "Move with purpose, people." Nurses scattered. Monitors screamed. Gloves snapped on. Time fractured into seconds. Rachel took her place without being told. Suction at the head of the bed. Her hands closed around the tubing, grip firm, fingers precise. She looked down at the patient and saw past the blood, past the torn clothing. A large man. Muscled. Older. A tactical vest cut away in haste. Her eyes caught the ink on his shoulder before her mind could stop it. Wings. A blade. Her breath caught for half a beat. Then it steadied. "Clear the airway," Caldwell barked. He did not look at her. He never did. Rachel moved smoothly, clearing blood, tracking the rise and fall of the chest. Something was wrong. Not subtle. Not theoretical. She watched the way the blood bubbled with each breath, the way the chest expanded unevenly. Her mind clicked through possibilities, discarding them fast. She knew this pattern. She had seen it in places where help was not minutes away. "Vitals," Caldwell demanded. "Falling," someone answered. "Pulse thready." Caldwell swore under his breath, hands moving faster now, sloppier. Adrenaline was a double-edged blade. Rachel leaned in slightly, eyes on the patient's neck, the angle of his trachea. Her voice rose, calm but firm. "Doctor." The word cut through the noise sharper than she intended. Caldwell finally turned, irritation flashing across his face. "What?" he snapped. Rachel did not flinch. "He has a tension pneumothorax," she said. "Simple. Certain. He needs decompression now." The room shifted. Just a fraction. Enough to be dangerous. Caldwell stared at her like she had spoken a foreign language. Then he laughed, a short, sharp sound that carried no humor. "A tension pneumothorax," he repeated, rolling the words around as if tasting them. "And you know that because what, more? A feeling." His eyes flicked to the others in the room, seeking confirmation, dominance. "Get me paddles. We're shocking him." Rachel's gaze stayed on the patient. The man's skin was turning ashen. Veins stood out along his neck like cords pulled too tight. The monitor stuttered, the rhythm unstable. "Wrong." "Shock won't fix this," she said, louder now. Still controlled. "His lung has collapsed. The pressure is crushing his heart." "Enough." Caldwell stepped closer, crowding her space again, voice rising. "You are a nurse. You do not diagnose in my trauma bay. You suction. You pass instruments. You stay in your lane." He turned away, already done with her, already convinced of his own authority. "Charge to 360. David hesitated by the crash cart, hands hovering. His eyes darted between Caldwell and the patient, then to Rachel. Fear won. Training won. He followed the order. "Clear!" Caldwell shouted. The shock jolted the body. Nothing. The monitor screamed, a flat, merciless tone. Rachel felt the room tighten around them. The patient had seconds, not minutes. Seconds. "Doctor," she said again, stepping forward. Her voice cut through the alarm like a blade. "Look at his chest. Look at the jugulars. He is dying from pressure, not rhythm." Caldwell spun on her, face flushed, eyes wild. "Shut up," he roared. "I am the attending surgeon. You are nothing here." He shoved past her shoulder, hard enough to knock her back a step. "If he dies, that's on you for distracting my team." The words landed heavy, final. The monitor continued its flat scream. Someone whispered, "We're losing him." Another shock. Still nothing. Caldwell slammed the paddles down onto the cart, breath heaving. "Time of death," he snapped. "Call it." "No," Rachel said. The word was quiet, not shouted, not begged, just there, solid. She moved before anyone could stop her, hand already reaching for the open tray. A 14-gauge needle caught the light as she picked it up. Caldwell turned, disbelief flashing across his face. "What do you think you're doing?" he demanded. Rachel met his eyes. There was no fear in hers now, only resolve. "Saving him," she said. And that was when Caldwell lost control. Caldwell lunged. There was no warning, no restraint left in him, just raw fury, breaking through the white coat and the title. His hand fisted into the back of Rachel's scrub cap, fingers tangling in her hair, yanking her head back hard enough to snap her spine straight. The needle clattered to the floor, skidding across tile. "I said get out of my trauma bay," he hissed, breath hot against her ear. "You are fired. You hear me? Fired!" The impact sent her stumbling into the metal cabinetry. The clang rang out like a gunshot. The room froze. A nurse dropped a chart. Someone gasped. No one moved. Violence was rare in this space, and when it happened, it usually came from patients, not from the man in charge. Caldwell stood there, chest heaving, eyes blazing, waiting for her to break. Rachel didn't scream. She didn't cry. She reached up slowly, deliberately, and adjusted her scrub cap. Her breathing was even now, almost unnaturally calm. When she lifted her head, the woman the room thought it knew was gone. Her posture changed. Feet set shoulder-width apart, weight balanced, stillness with intent. "You shouldn't have done that," she said quietly. The words carried. Not loud, not threatening. Final. The charge nurse felt the hair on his arms rise. Somewhere in the back of the room, someone whispered for security, voice shaking. Caldwell scoffed, masking the flicker of uncertainty that crossed his face. "Get her out!" he barked. "Now!" Rachel didn't look at him again. She stepped past him instead. Fast. Caldwell reached for her arm on instinct, arrogance telling him he could stop her. He was wrong. Her hand closed around his wrist, fingers finding the nerve without effort. A sharp twist, a sweep of his leg. Gravity did the rest. Caldwell hit the floor face first, a sound of pain tearing out of him as his arm bent at an angle it was never meant to. "Stay down," Rachel said. It wasn't a request. It was an order. She released him and moved on, already reaching for a fresh needle. "David," she said, calm as a metronome. "Time me." The room exhaled in shock as she dropped to the patient's side, found the landmark by feel, and drove the needle in. The hiss of escaping air was loud, unmistakable. The monitor beeped once, then again. Rhythm returned. Life rushed back into the room, and nothing would ever be the same. The sound of the monitor changed everything. Not dramatic, not loud, just steady. A living rhythm pushing back against the silence that had almost claimed the room. Rachel held the needle in place for a breath longer, watching the chest rise more evenly now, watching color creep back into the patient's face. She withdrew the needle with practiced care and stripped off her gloves, dropping them into the bin, as if this were any other procedure on any other night. Caldwell groaned on the floor behind her, clutching his wrist, shock bleeding into humiliation. "She assaulted me," he spat, voice cracking as he tried to sit up. "She attacked me. Call security. Call the police." His words echoed weakly now, stripped of command, stripped of certainty. David stood frozen, stopwatch still running in his hand. He stared at the monitor, then at Rachel, then at Caldwell on the floor. His mouth opened, closed. Finally, he swallowed. "He's alive," he said, almost to himself. She saved him. Around him, nurses exchanged looks. Fear. Relief. Something else stirring beneath it. Recognition. Rachel turned at last. Her eyes swept the room, taking everything in. The shaken interns, the nurse pressed against the wall, hand over her mouth. The patient fighting for breath, alive because someone had acted. She looked down at Caldwell, really looked at him, and her voice was level when she spoke. "You're relieved of duty," she said. "Step away from my patient." Caldwell laughed, a brittle, disbelieving sound. "You think you can say that to me?" he snapped. "I run this place. My father sits on the board. You're nothing." He tried to stand. His knees buckled. No one helped him. Sirens wailed in the distance. Closer now. Security. Police. Consequences arriving fast. Rachel didn't move. She placed her hands behind her back, fingers interlaced, posture straight, not defensive. Waiting. When the first officer pushed through the doors, the room split in two. Caldwell surged forward, pointing, already shaping the story. "That's her," he said. "She's unstable. She attacked me and endangered a patient." The officer's gaze shifted to Rachel. Oversized scrubs. Calm face. No blood on her hands. "Ma'am," he said cautiously, "I'm going to need you to step away." Rachel nodded once and complied. Metal cuffs closed around her wrists with a final click that cut deeper than any shout. No one spoke as she was led past the gurney. She glanced once at the patient, still breathing, still alive. She did not look back. The hallway felt narrower with every step, the sound of Rachel's shoes swallowed by the low murmur of the emergency room behind her. Conversations resumed in fragments, cautious and hushed, like people afraid the walls might be listening. She walked between the officers without resistance, shoulders squared, gaze forward. The cuffs were tight, cold against her skin, but her breathing stayed even. She had worn heavier restraints in darker places. This was nothing. Behind her, Caldwell found his voice again. "You can't let her leave," he shouted, pain sharpening his words. "She's dangerous. She disobeyed a direct medical order. She nearly killed that man." His eyes flicked toward the staff, daring anyone to contradict him. No one did. A few nurses stared at the floor. Others watched Rachel go with something like shame burning behind their eyes. At the nurses' station, Megan pressed her fingers to her lips, heart pounding. She had seen the way Rachel moved, the way the room changed. "She saved him," she whispered to David as the officers passed. David didn't answer. His jaw was clenched tight, a battle playing out behind his eyes. He knew the truth. He also knew how this place worked. The automatic doors slid open with a soft hiss, letting in the cool night air. Rain streaked the glass, blurring the lights outside. An officer guided Rachel toward the waiting cruiser. "You have the right to remain silent," he began, voice professional, distant. She nodded again. Silent was easy. Silence had kept her alive for a long time. Inside the car, the door shut with a heavy thud. The world narrowed to the plastic seat, the faint smell of disinfectant, the steady thrum of the engine. Through the window, Rachel caught one last glimpse of the hospital. Caldwell stood near the entrance now, arm cradled, talking animatedly to a man in an expensive coat who had arrived too quickly. His father. Power gathering like a storm. Rachel leaned her head back against the seat and closed her eyes. In her mind, a clock started ticking. Not with panic, with certainty. She counted breaths, counted seconds. Somewhere far above the city, phones would be ringing, doors would be opening. They thought this was over. They had no idea it was just beginning. The interrogation room was a square box of grey concrete and buzzing fluorescent light, the kind of place designed to wear people down. Rachel sat alone at the metal table, one cuff looped through a steel ring, the other resting loose against her wrist. 2 hours passed, then 3. No water. No questions yet. Just waiting. The oldest pressure tactic in the book. It didn't work on her. The door opened at last. Detective Mark Reyes stepped in, jacket draped over one arm, tie loosened, eyes tired in a way that came from seeing too much and trusting too little. He dropped a thin folder on the table. "Rachel Moore," he said, flipping it open. "No criminal record. Nursing license issued 3 months ago. Before that, you don't exist." He looked up. "That's unusual." Rachel stared past him, eyes fixed on a crack in the wall. "I want my phone call," she said. Reyes sighed and leaned back. "Your doctor is pressing felony assault. Claims you used a weapon. His father's already called City Hall." He tapped the folder. "This could go bad fast for you. If you tell me your side, maybe I can slow it down." "I want my phone call," she repeated. He studied her for a long moment, then slid the desk phone across the table. "1 call," he said. "Make it count." Rachel picked up the receiver. She didn't dial a local number. She entered a long sequence, deliberate, precise pourtant. When someone answered, her voice changed. Not louder, sharper. Command carried in calm. "This is Sierra 709, she said. "Code black. Civilian detention. Location Seattle 4th Precinct. I am compromised." Reyes straightened. "Who did you just call?" he asked. Rachel set the phone down gently. "You might want to get some coffee," she said. "It's about to be a long night." Before he could respond, the building shook with the sound of heavy boots in the hallway. Voices. Not shouting. Controlled. Authoritative. The door burst open, and 2 men in tactical gear stepped in, weapons low but ready. Behind them walked a man in an army service uniform, stars catching the harsh light. He stopped in front of Rachel and came to attention. "Major Moore," he said. Reyes forgot how to breathe. The cuffs came off with a sharp, metallic snap that echoed louder than the buzzing lights. Detective Reyes stepped back instinctively, hands lifting slightly, as if the air itself had shifted. The general did not raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Major Rachel Moore is under federal protection," he said evenly. "She is not to be detained, questioned, or interfered with." His eyes flicked once to the folder on the table. And this arrest never happened. Reyes swallowed hard. "Sir," he started, then stopped. He nodded and moved aside without another word. The men in tactical gear remained still, unreadable, blocking the doorway like statues carved from intent. Rachel stood, rolling her wrists once, feeling circulation return. Her posture changed the moment she rose. Not defiant, certain. Outside, the night had teeth. Cold air cut across the precinct parking lot as black vehicles idled with engines woo and ready. Rachel stepped into the open space like she belonged there, because she did. The general walked beside her, voice lowered now. "Your patient is stable," he said. "Transferred to a secured unit. He asked for you." She nodded once. Relief passed across her face so fast most people would have missed it. Across town, the hospital lights still burned bright. Inside those walls, panic was setting in. Phones rang unanswered. Emails disappeared. A server room door closed for the first time in years. The Caldwell name was already moving to contain the damage, to bury the night under influence and money like it always had. They were fast. They were sloppy. And for the first time, they were late. Rachel changed in the back of a vehicle, pulling on clothes that felt more like skin than costume. The general handed her a tablet. "We found patterns," he said. "Settlements, missing files, deaths that never reached review boards." Rachel scrolled, jaw tightening. Names. Dates. Lives reduced to line items. This wasn't incompetence, she said quietly. It was routine. "It still is," he replied, "unless someone stops it." Rachel looked out at the city as they drove, lights stretching and blurring. The hospital rose ahead of them again, glass and steel reflecting its own image back at itself. "Then we don't ask permission," she said. "We finish this." The general watched her for a long moment, then nodded. "I was hoping you'd say that." The basement of Seattle Grace smelled like storm and old paper, a maze of pipes and humming generators that most people never saw. Rachel moved through it in a borrowed maintenance jumpsuit, hood up, head down, a wrench heavy in her pocket. Cameras swept in predictable arcs. She knew their blind spots. 3 months of night shifts had taught her where the building breathed and where it blinked. In her ear, a calm voice guided her turn by turn. "2 private contractors just entered the lobby," the voice said. "Armed, not hospital security." Rachel pressed flat against a concrete pillar as a cart rattled past, an orderly yawning, oblivious. "Copy," she whispered. Her pulse stayed low. This wasn't fear. It was math. The service elevator opened on the 4th floor with a soft chime. Executive carpet, mahogany doors. The air changed here, quieter, cleaner, like money. She reached the server archives door and paused. Locked. She knocked once, twice, a pattern only one person would recognize. "It's personal, she said, softly. "Rachel." A beat. Then the lock buzzed. Kinsley stood there, eyes red, hands shaking. They're wiping everything, she breathed, pulling Rachel inside. Blue lights blinked in frantic rows. A progress bar crawled across a screen. 90%. Sterling called it an update, Kinsley said. It's a purge. Rachel scanned the racks. Which bay holds the surgical backups? 3, Kinsley said, pointing. Rachel moved. Fingers found the latch. Locked. She braced and pulled. The plastic groaned. The door exploded inward. 2 men in dark suits rushed in, one with a stun baton, the other raising a suppressed pistol. "Step away," the gunman barked. Kinsley screamed and dropped. Rachel raised her hands. Panic painted on her face just long enough to buy a breath. Then the wrench left her hand, spinning end over end. Bone cracked. The gun clattered. She closed the distance in a blur. Physics beat anger. A choke. A thud. Silence. The screen flashed 98%. Rachel tore the drive free, snapping the lock with a grunt. The room went dark. Behind her, a voice shook. "Give it to me." Ethan Caldwell stood in the doorway, sweat-soaked, eyes wild, the fallen gun trembling in his hands. Rachel stepped in front of Kinsley, drive held up like proof. "It's over," she said. Sirens wailed below. Real ones. Ethan's shoulders sagged. The gun fell. He sank to his knees, sobbing. Rachel didn't look back as she turned for the door. Camera flashes lit the atrium like lightning. White bursts bouncing off polished marble and glass as reporters packed in shoulder to shoulder. Sterling Caldwell stood at the podium, suit perfect, hair immaculate, grief arranged carefully across his face. "This hospital stands for healing," he said, voice smooth and practiced. What happened earlier today was a tragedy caused by a disturbed individual. Heads nodded, pens scratched. The story was already forming. Above him, the massive screen flickered. At first, no one noticed. Sterling continued, warming to the moment, painting his son as a victim, a brilliant surgeon betrayed by a violent subordinate. Then the hospital logo warped, static hissed, the image cut to black. Sterling frowned and glanced back. The video came up without warning. Trauma bay footage, high angle, clear, unforgiving. Rachel stood beside the patient, voice urgent, hands steady. Ethan Caldwell loomed over her, sneering. The sound system caught every word. "Know your place." The slap echoed through the atrium, louder than the reporters, louder than Sterling's sharp intake of breath. The room went dead silent. Gasps rippled like shock waves. Cameras swung to the screen, then back to Sterling as color drained from his face. "This is fabricated," he shouted, pounding the podium. "A cyber attack." But the video shrank, replaced by documents scrolling fast. Settlements, wrongful deaths, amputations, dates, amounts, his signature, his son's name, over and over. Years of blood buried under money. The doors at the far end of the atrium opened. The crowd parted instinctively. Uniformed state troopers walked in, followed by federal agents. The lead trooper stepped past the podium and stopped in front of Sterling. "You're under arrest," he said. The words landed heavy. Final. Sterling backed away, stammering, hands raised. "This is insane," he cried. "You don't know who I am." The cuffs closed anyway. From the side entrance, Rachel stepped into view, grease-smudged jumpsuit, hard drive in her hand. The room turned toward her. Ethan was brought in moments later, head down, wrists bound, stripped of everything he'd hidden behind. Applause started somewhere high above, slow at first, then louder, spreading until the atrium shook with it. Rachel didn't smile. She just stood there, breathing, watching a system collapse under its own weight. The applause followed her like a wave as she slipped away from the atrium, down a quiet corridor that smelled faintly of antiseptic and rain-soaked coats. Rachel didn't look back. She never had. The noise faded, replaced by the steady, familiar sounds of a hospital doing its work. A gurney rolled past. A nurse laughed softly at something mundane. Life went on, stubborn and ordinary, exactly the way it should. On the top floor, behind secured doors, the man she had saved lay breathing on his own, chest rising in a slow, even rhythm. He opened his eyes when she stepped in, recognition cutting through the haze. He managed a weak grin. "Still saving lives," he murmured. Rachel squeezed his hand once, a quiet promise, then let go. She didn't stay for thanks. She never needed it. Later, when the lights outside softened and the city exhaled, a general offered her a way back to the uniform, to rank and ceremony, and a name that carried weight in rooms like the one she'd just left. Rachel listened. Then she shook her head. Her place was here, where decisions were made in seconds, and hands mattered more than titles, where people without power needed someone who wouldn't look away. She changed back into scrubs before her next shift. Same halls, same chaos, different air. The nurses met her eyes now. Some nodded. Some smiled. David handed her a chart without a word. Trust passed between them like a current. Rachel pulled on gloves, steady as ever, and stepped back into the noise. The work was waiting. Stories like this don't belong to one person. They belong to every moment someone chooses courage over comfort, truth over silence, action over fear. If this story resonated with you, take a second to like and subscribe so more stories like it can be told. And if you feel it too, drop a comment saying, "Stand for justice."